Ashleigh Gardner was walking into Melbourne Cricket Ground in February when it hit her. She was finally making her international debut for the Australian women's team. In 59 years, no one like her had done what she was about to do. As the traditional first cap ceremony started, she pressed her palms together to soothe her nerves. The 20-year-old watched anxiously as former Australian fast bowler Jason Gillespie walked toward her. In his hand was a bright yellow Australian cap that was soon to be hers. He handed it to her and said, "Great work on becoming an Australian cricketer." Gardner flashed a broad smile as she took the cap from the 6'5" legend, the most popular Indigenous Australian to play the game. "I made it," she thought to herself. The yellow cap represented more than just Gardner's arrival to the national team. She also became the first Indigenous woman to play for Australia since 1958. There are so few because of low exposure to the sport, high costs to play and racism. And before Gardner, whose heritage is Murruweri, an Aboriginal tribe from northern New South Wales, only one other Indigenous woman, Faith Thomas, had played for the national team in its 83-year history. Starting on June 24, the all-rounder will represent her country in the ICC Women's World Cup, hosted by the United Kingdom, as the first female Indigenous Australian to play in a World Cup. When Gardner was 6 years old, she started playing cricket in her backyard with her older brother, Aaron. Noticing her talent, Gardner's father, Jim, signed her up to play for Riversdale Workers Cricket Club, the local boys' team in New South Wales. She played for the club for 7 years before getting picked for the under-12, under-15 and under-18 girls teams and, eventually, represented her state team, the New South Wales Breakers, with whom she still plays. She is also member of the Sydney Sixers, which are in the Women's Big Bash League, an Australian T20 league tournament. A few years ago, Gardner was a shy teenager trying to learn as much about the sport as she could from the sidelines. Today, with help from mentors and fellow Australian cricketers including Rachel Haynes, Elise Perry and Alyssa Healy, Gardner has matured into a strong and confident adult. She now gives presentations in front of hundreds of children about team building and leadership skills in schools across Australia, and she is the inspiration for numerous athletes, particularly females, in her community to take up sports on a more competitive level. "Ash is a really proud Indigenous Australian," Haynes said, "and that's really important to her, and it's great to have that diversity within a team, but also within a sport as well." The 2016-17 season has been memorable for Gardner. After her T20 debut for Australia in February, she earned her ODI cap against New Zealand. Her performance garnered her the Rebel Young Gun Award, equivalent to a Rising Star Award, for scoring 414 runs and taking 10 wickets. In the process, she helped the Sixers win the second season of the Women's Big Bash League and led the Breakers to first place in the domestic Australian tournament. Even with the frenzy of league and domestic competition, she hasn't strayed from her roots. She captained the inaugural Australian Aboriginal women's team, which toured India and played in the annual Imparda Cup, the National Indigenous Cricket Championships. Still, something had to give in Gardner's life. Out of high school, the New South Wales cricket program set her up with a gardening apprenticeship as a curator. And in October, when demands for cricket ramped up, she found it difficult to both work and train. She ultimately decided to focus on cricket full-time, which has worked out perfectly for her, New South Wales Breakers coach Joanne Broadbent said. Not long after, the Australian selectors noticed Gardner's breakthrough season and added her name to the World Cup roster. Gardner credits her resilience for helping her survive the year, and perform well under pressure. "Cricket's a funny game where you can get 5 ducks and you need to be ready for the 6th game to hopefully not do that again," Gardner said. "Especially being an all-rounder, I need to be bowling and batting in most games, So if I am having a bad day with one, I need to be ready to bounce back and hopefully do the other skill really well. That's the key thing I've tried to do over the past year. A solid batsman at number 3, Gardner also evolved into a useful spin bowler, which has made her an asset for all of her teams. Broadbent called her a player with a great gut instinct. When she was on tour in Sri Lanka, the opposing team needed 3 runs off the last over, and instead of choosing the main bowler to bowl the over, she decided to bowl herself. Her team pulled off a victory. Gardner's coaches and teammates also applauded her dedication to improving. Once, during a breakers training session, Gardner was trying to mix things up with her bowling action. Broadbent saw her struggle for a while and then watched her walk away with a determined look. Gardner continued running in to bowl by herself. She then noticed her mistake when she accidentally looked at her bowling action on a mirror perched on the side of the field. The player being able to help coach themselves is pretty much the best thing that you can see, Broadbent said. Playing for different teams has also helped Gardner evolve. She knows when she is to lead and follow. With Australia, she follows the footsteps of Healy and Perry, but during the Imparda Cup, she gives directions to her teammates. But come June 24 to July 23, Gardner is ready to take on the responsibility that comes with playing for the defending world champions. Her aim for this World Cup is to play in as many matches as possible and contribute both with the bat and the ball. To win the World Cup, she said, would be incredible.